I am close. My hand is hovering over the Oregon panic button. It's right there. I'm ready to strike at any moment. Bad first quarter. We're mashing that thing like crazy Saturday night.
Yeah.
Beaver fan chiming in at the Vancouver Ford text line, trying to one-up me in my panic. How dare you? I am mashing the panic button. One-dimensional offense, very limited quarterback play. That first half felt like they thought they could just line up and beat Idaho State.
Yeah.
They couldn't. It's alarming. They had to start opening up the offense a lot more than I think they wanted to or thought they would need to against that level of opponent. I obviously was down at the game. This is your ultimate sign of karma. I was in Eugene talking to an Oregon staffer on the sideline. This was in the first quarter when Oregon had scored on their opening drive, 7-0, and it's like, oh, here we go. Okay, Idaho can't get a first down. It's going to be a bloodbath. Everybody's leaving at the end of the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly did not end up happening, and I remember joking with somebody on the sideline because I was just checking my score, seeing what's going on. All right, and at that time, they were losing 9-7, and I made a joke to a staffer down, look at that, Oregon State's losing to an FCS team, and then just ultimate karma right back in my face. But pull away late, the Beavs get the win, 1-0, 38-15 was the final.
Yeah.
My Beaver brethren, how do we feel?
Well, first of all, let's go back to our Pac-12, our big PP,
our
that
big
we're
PP
doing
picks.
every week.
Yeah.
Who covered? Washington State?
Washington State and Washington, I believe,
Washington
covered.
I think Washington
Washington
covered.
was a 27.5, and they won by 32.
Yeah, it was
right?
38.
So the Washington schools handled
Washington-
business.
yeah.
Oregon schools not handling
so
business.
much.
The Beavs could have there at the end if they wanted to.
Maybe. I just think that score's pretty lined up with what the game was.
Yeah.
Like dead right there. I agree with some of that listener's point. 9-7, I'm watching this. They've snapped a punt out of the end zone.
Yeah.
For a safety.
They
and-
cannot throw the football to save anything. Jam Griffin fumbles on what seems to
Opening
be an
drive of
opening
the game,
drive
yeah.
after they stop Idaho State. And, I'm just thinking, oh, my God, I've seen this story in
Yeah.
Corvallis before. I've lived this multiple
Just
times.
settle down.
But there is a little truth to they didn't open it up so much, by the way. They had the one long pass play to David Wells Jr.
It's a beautiful throw.
McCoy was 9 of 10 for 114. They didn't really open. They just ran it, and they kept running it and running it and running it. And so Hankerson and Griffin had themselves a day.
I think they had 2 touchdown drives where they only called run plays.
But they were also incredibly lucky to start the game. Idaho State's first starting quarterback, they switched multiple times. They had 4 dudes play.
It made no sense.
He missed multiple throws that would have probably been
Wide,
touchdown passes for Idaho State early. Now, they still end up going up 9-7. I was a little worried at halftime. I'm not going to lie to you. And I think anybody pretending that they weren't, I think it's ridiculous. Idaho State's an FCS team. Yes, you are kind of in this weird pseudo Mountain West thing, but you should still be separated pretty decently from them. And they were in a struggle bus. Thankfully, though, their defense locked down in the second half. They established their physicality up on the front with their run game, and they pulled away. And that third quarter separation paired with getting that final touchdown in the fourth quarter, you breathe a sigh of relief. A tale of two halves, if you will. But yeah, the first half, I was definitely a little concerned of they're giving up big chunk plays through the air. Secondary's kind of getting, thrown on a little bit here. They're moving the ball all right. Offensively, Idaho State was on the ground. I was a little worried in the first half, but the second half, they settled in and they handled their business.
Yeah, the Idaho State quarterback rotation made no sense. I thought that Tracy guy was playing pretty well. I was going back and watching it when I got home, and I ended up finishing it.
Yeah, I
on
thought he was
Sunday.
better than Cook. I didn't understand
why
that.
would we sit him?
Yeah.
And then that made no sense. I thought he had finally gotten into a rhythm. He had the touchdown pass. They had a little bit of momentum towards the end of the first half, and then they sat him. And the other guy really struggled. To your point earlier in the game, he did have a dude wide open on kind of a broken play that he just overshot by 2 or 3 yards that could have easily been an early touchdown for Idaho State. I just, it's hard to be too reactionary to week 1 games when there's so much newness, new staff. I know Sprague was there last year, but new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new play callers, new quarterback, new stars here, new running backs, new
linemen,
new everything. So
Yeah.
it's just hard to come out in week 1 and be like, why weren't you perfect? Why didn't you do this? Because I do think there was a bit of a let's feel our way through this game. We know we're going to be able to run the football. I think that's the only criticism that I have. But again, I don't know how much of that is by design. They just didn't really even try to do a lot in the passing game. And as the season goes on in some of your tougher matchups, you will have to be multidimensional offensively. I did really like the touchdown pass that McCoy threw. That was a beautiful ball. He had a couple other deep shots that he underthrew a little bit. One of them drew a pass interference. I also thought you saw kind of the up and down roller coaster that you're going to ride with him. he had a stretch, I want to say it was in the second quarter, back-to-back plays where the first one was like a design quarterback run. I can't remember if it was zone read or like a quarterback power, but he mass circled twice, had 2 spin moves, picks up like 7 more yards, and you're like, ooh, there's the quarterback run game that's going to be effective.
The double spin move. I was
and then the very next play, he's rolling out on a play-action pass, and he doesn't seemingly see a guy that's 2 feet in front of his face, and he just takes a sack. And it's like there's promise there and potential, but you're going to have to take your lumps. I thought your running back tandem looked really good. Again, it's Idaho State, but outside of the fumbles for Jam Griffin, both of them ran the ball really hard. Your pressure rate picked up in the second half. That was a little non-existent early in the game, but I just, for a lot of these teams in week 1, when there's so many new faces and new things, you won the game by 23 points. I understand Oregon State fan wants to see more that's texting in saying they're panicking. But we're going to find out a lot about this team in the next 3 weeks, similar to what we just said with Oregon. San Diego State, tough for tests, on the road this week. They're a slight favorite.
Yep.
Then you get the Civil War. Then you get Purdue. Like, next 3 weeks will tell us a lot. They survived. They didn't blow a historic loss to Idaho State. They did exactly what they needed to do.
Well, it'd be interesting to see going forward, too, because the other part of Oregon State now panicking. I'm not in panic mode for Oregon State, maybe the way you are right now with Oregon because of where they're at and who they played and all that. But I'm interested to see how they fare against the schedule, because Purdue and Oregon, we know Oregon talent-wise is substantially ahead of them, and Purdue, I think on paper, should be ahead of them from a talent gap standpoint, given what they lost in the portal. But the rest of that, like San Diego State won this weekend against a team I'd never heard of. You talk about Lindenwood. Texas A&M Commerce.
Never heard of it.
Had never heard of them.
Never heard of it.
But their running back, Marquez Cooper, he ran for 220-plus yards. So this is going to be a real ground attack by San Diego State. And I liked what I saw defensively from Oregon State in the second half. But I'm not going to lie. I was a little concerned with the first, despite it just being 9 points. I thought there was a lot more room for yardage and points for Idaho State, given it every time I watched a receiver catch it, they either caught a difficult pass or there was like 6 yard separation. And so that left me somewhat concerned of the secondary for Oregon State. But again, first game, 100 degrees outside for when these teams are playing, by the way.
Trent Bray, an absolute psycho, dude, in long sleeve black T-shirt, just facing the sun.
He looked like he was sunburned before the game had started.
His face was a strawberry by the end of the game, man.
I respect the tan.
Get this guy a bucket hat or something.
It's just, it's tougher, I think, to pin down where you should be panic-wise or whatever you want to describe it with Oregon State, given so much newness and then what their schedule is. Oregon doesn't have the wiggle room that Oregon State might have this year, where they can not have such a good passing attack, but grind out a good win against, I don't know, fill in the blank Nevada or whatever. Oregon plays that way against Ohio State. They're going to lose. And it's not really going to be much of a contest. And so I think that's the difference here of what we're talking about between panicking or just being a little concerned about some things because of their strength of schedule. But they're going to have a good test this week and go down to San Diego State, given what I saw from a little bit of the Aztecs Lions matchup this week.
Speaking of that game, Texas A&M Commerce had a 6-3 lead on San Diego State at halftime in their stadium. They scored 3 points.
It was the third quarters and the fourth quarter.
They put 42 up on the board in the second half. So they pulled away slightly. So this isn't a game that you can't win by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a more formidable test, I would think, than Idaho State, and you're going on the road. And so you get off to a 2-0 start. You do want to see more from the passing game. Want to see those pressure rates pick up a little bit earlier, and they are going to be without a starting linebacker who got called for targeting. Chisholm, I believe, got a targeting call in the second half of that game, and he's going to be out the first half.
So my only other concern, aside from maybe some defensive questions, is the quarterback spot. And we talked about this when they named McCoy.
Do we like playing both guys?
Well, I certainly understand why you play both guys in that game. Jabari didn't really do anything for me to go, oh, he's got to be the starter, and then McCoy had the deep pass to Wells. But I'm still like, okay, when you play a team and they take the run game away, what are you?
That's going to be the game plan. 9 in the box and
exactly.
Good luck running the ball.
And that's where I'm at, is I don't really know where my confidence is on McCoy, and I know it's not going to be particularly high for Johnson, given he has almost no experience playing.